It's been a week since my last video! Welcome to PhD&D everyone, I'm Dr. Bowers, and today we're going to talk about stress damage in your D&D campaign. Put briefly, your campaign features stress damage when each player character has a second set of hit points, distinct from their normal hit points, which are only affected by psychological phenomena like horror and distress. In some tabletop role-playing games like Call of Cthulhu especially, or in some video games like Eternal Darkness or Amnesia, this second set of hit points is called a sanity meter. And it functions the same way, but many people understandably eschew that label because it may unintentionally convey some kind of judgment on those who suffer from real psychological distress. So, why is stress damage cool to have in your 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign? Well, there's basically 4 reasons. First, it's a mechanical way to dramatize emotions. If you're telling a story in which the player character's attitudes and emotions are supposed to play a prominent role, and this is especially true for horror campaigns, the genre horror, after all, is named after the emotion it's trying to elicit, then this is an excellent way to make sure that in the gameplay, those emotions matter. If you have a stress damage meter in your game, then a character becoming frightened and horrified is not just role-played, it also has a mechanical cost. Second, stress damage provides a way to lose a PC other than through death. The easiest and most straightforward way for a player to lose their PC is through death, but sometimes people feel as though there's more at stake and it's more meaningful if there are other ways to lose their PC too. An example is if you're having a campaign set in the Feywild, one thing that can happen to your player character is that they die, but another thing that might happen to their player character is that they get called away. They are lured and enticed into staying in the Feywild forever at some tea party or something. The player who has that PC should roll up a new one because that PC is lost, but it wasn't through death, and it was a way that flavored the setting. Stress damage is a way of doing that. Third, stress damage offers a way for knowledge to be dangerous. And this is why it works really well in horror campaigns. Campaigns or settings in which there is something that people were not meant to know. If a player character walks up to the evil Nomicon and opens it up and reads its evil pages, they could suffer stress damage from trying to take in such horrible blasphemies. Okay, I'm in a place with some books. Let's pick up this book. Says it's a book. Let's go over here and read the book. It just hurt me. And finally, stress damage offers a way to mechanically convey how horrible or how terrifying a certain monster or event is. In this way, the fearsomeness of a monster actually gets into the gameplay. It's kind of like how a dragon has a frightening presence, but it's not an all-or-nothing condition like the frightened condition is. So those are 4 reasons to have stress damage in your campaign. Now, arguably the most brilliant and groundbreaking use of stress damage in any game was in the Red Hook game Darkest Dungeon, and their stress damage system is so beloved that if you look in D&D forums and you ask, well, how do I model stress, or how do I model horror or sanity, there's a wealth of responses that invariably say Darkest Dungeon, Darkest Dungeon, Darkest Dungeon. And it turns out that there is a brilliant conversion of the Darkest Dungeon stress damage system from an online content creator called Kor-Artificer, link in the doobly-doo, which we're going to look over briefly and I'm going to comment on. You'll see Kor-Artificer's pages on the left of the screen and my own notes on the right, as well as me down in the corner. Let's go! So here we are, Variant Rules Stress System. Here's basically how you handle this. You roll up a second set of hit points, decided the exact same way as normal. You keep the same hit dice and you roll it and all. The only difference is that you use your Wisdom modifier instead of using your Constitution modifier. A second feature of this system is that you start out at 0 stress, and as you take stress damage, you count up your stress points total, therefore, is a kind of limit that you're not supposed to reach. As to what happens when you reach that limit, we'll get to that. When it comes to gaining stress damage, you get it from psychic damage, from critical hits, from environments that deprive you of your senses, from the frightened condition, from being reduced to 0 hit points, and from witnessing the death of an ally. And here Kor-Artificer elegantly employs a set of rules in order to handle those. I would add that you should feel free to inflict stress damage on any player characters who encounter something which in your campaign setting is scary or horrifying, or which you are trying to dramatize by making it seem scary and horrifying. You can do this by tiers, in fact. If they're levels 1 through 5 and they encounter something scary, just throw a d4 stress on them. If there's levels 5 through 10, add a d6 stress on them. 10 through 15, make it a d8, and 15 through 20, make it a d10. If you want to make your environment seem spooky and dangerous, make sure that it's full of things which, when interacted with, may lead to this kind of damage. This way, your player characters won't just carelessly flip through every single book they find on every shelf. They're going to stop, read its cover, and think for a minute if they see that the title is Evil Nomicon. Moving along, the second page of this elegant 3-page document shows us what happens if you reach your stress threshold. That is, if you take stress damage and more stress damage, and your stress damage counts up from 0 until it reaches your total, you gain either an affliction or a virtue. And these are really neat. You have the player character roll a d100, and if they get a 1 through 75, something very bad happens to them, and if they get a 76 through 100, something very good happens to them. They remain subjected to this condition until their next long rest. And these are all meant to be flavored as the player character acting out because they just can't bear the stress of what they're doing. They can't stand to be down in that dark dungeon anymore. They can't stand to be surrounded by goblins anymore. The sight of the undead is too much for them, and so on. Look at how cool some of these are, too. If you get the abusive affliction, then at the start of your turn, all allies within 50 feet of you get 1d6 stress points. That is cool and also brutal. I think in the universe, what this is doing is causing the stressed out player character to start yelling at their allies, like, "Are you trying to get us killed?" And then finally, we've got some rules for how character classes interact with stress. In some cases, their signature abilities actually produce stress, like barbarians get stressed out while they rage. And in other cases, there are ways to heal stress damage, like a paladin's lay on hands or a monk's stillness of mind actually heal stress. There's also some feats pertaining to stress that are really cool, and this is just a really awesome, fun way to run stress damage in a D&D campaign. So what do you think of stress damage? Is it something that you would want to use in your Dungeons & Dragons campaign? Do you think it belongs anywhere other than in a horror campaign? If so, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Don't forget to hit the bell icon if you want notifications on the weekly updates on this channel. And thanks!